again, because he first loved me. Be first love me. Hallelujah.
Good morning, my sisters and my brothers. Hope everybody had a good night's rest. Let me thank Brother Booker for leading us in our morning glory. I hope everybody had a good night's rest. All right, now I'm going to need your help a little bit this morning. If you see me with my Bluetooth in my ear, the bishops have an emergency conference call at 10 o'clock. I can't be over there on that meeting and in here at the same time, so I'm going to listen to what they're saying while I'm presiding. All right? I hate to have them in a conference call and I don't know what they're doing. I love all of them, but I want to know what they're doing. All right, one time we had a meeting and I wasn't on it. And after the meeting, I found out they assigned me something to do and didn't ask me to do it. And it was something none of the rest of them wanted to do. So, you see the Bluetooth in my ear, you know I'm listening to the saints. All right. Let me do a couple of things which I want to do this morning. Is Dr. Cynthia McDonald here this morning? All right, Dr. McDonald wants to give us a report. Somebody get her a microphone.
Testing. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'd like to give you a report this morning concerning the 6th District Thriving in Ministry 2020 grant that we received in 2020 and let you know of the accomplishments that the accomplishments of our goals and so forth, and just to also inform you as to where we are. The Shift Leadership Program, which is the grant program that we began with the grant money, started on February the 20th, 2021. And so with the initial period of the grant, everything was about startup activities. We trained our mentors, we trained our key facilitators, and I think we did a very good job in making sure that our mentors and our facilitators were well prepared to do leadership and to walk with our participants. The primary aims and purposes of our program is reflected in our vision, our mission, and our goal. And the mission is to provide supportive, holistic innovations for thriving in ministry. Our vision is to promote pastoral well-being, pastoral agency, and pastoral imagination. And our goal is to create a dynamic, comprehensive leadership development and mentoring program that promotes self-awareness, creativity, meaningful relationship building, and self-differentiated leadership. And so with that, the SHIFT program trained its mentors and its facilitators, and we are still in the process of training. We have 3 modes of mentoring and leadership development that we have implemented. We have one-on-one mentoring, and so our participants receive a one-on-one mentor. We have team mentors. And so we have a male and a female key mentor team facilitator who facilitates a group of 10 to 12 ministers or BOE students. And then we have group mentoring. Group mentoring is all about us coming together, the participants coming together throughout the state of Georgia, and participating in a webinar with a well-established pastor throughout the country, okay? And so we have one-on-one mentoring, we have team mentoring, we have group mentoring. And with that, our overarching goal was to allocate resources, to help our participants allocate resources, to be creative, to use such things as well-being, agency, imagination. And in addition to that, we also have a research goal. And that primary goal was to evidence the targeted approaches to social support. And so what does social support have to do? What is the relationship between these means of social support and clergy leadership and well-being? I think that we've accomplished the goals in establishing our program, and not only that, accomplishing the goals and making sure that our program meets the needs of our clergy. Now we are in a place where we are recruiting for the second year. We are recruiting BOE students. We are recruiting any pastor, no matter how many years of experience you have in pastoral ministry. We are recruiting people right now to be a part of our second year. We have some amazing facilitators who will begin doing their training as certified coaches in January. They will do a 6-month training with the CAP Institute to become certified coaches, as well as working with Emory University in training and continuously training our mentors. And so with that, if you know someone, or if you know of someone, a pastor or someone, a BOE student who might be interested in the program, please, please, please let me know. We did recognize that we had to make some modifications to the program, of course, because in the first year of a program, you're going to have your lumps, your bumps. And so we have done the appropriate assessment. We have made some amazing modifications that will include a women in ministry cohort, as well as a cohort that focuses solely on vocational discernment. And so aiding our students, if they are not called to be pastors, aiding our students in exploring chaplaincy and in exploring other areas or other tracks of ministry, and recognizing that fivefold ministry. And so I invite you, as I said, that if you know someone or if you might be interested in the program, then we are going to have an amazing, amazing year this year. I would like to say thank you to those who were just, been in the ups and downs with me concerning the program, the Shift Leadership Program, our Shift Advisory Committee, Dr. William D. Watley, Dr. Tony Beelan Ingram, Dr. Susan Buxton, Dr. Jay Haithco, and Dr. Gregory Eason, as well as our shift facilitators who facilitate our cohort groups throughout the state, Reverend Charles Ramsey, Reverend Cheryl Powell, Reverend Daniel Thomas, Reverend Maria Gordon, Reverend Deborah Knight, Reverend Johnetta Prater, Reverend Michael Ephraim, and Reverend Terrence Evans. Thank you to all of the shift facilitators, the advisory committee, all of the mentors, and all of the participants. And we look forward to an amazing, amazing year that starts in September of this year. Thank you all.
Thank you so much. Dr. McDonald, a good hand. Thank you for a wonderful report, and I want to thank her for all of the wonderful work that she is doing to be a blessing to the 6th District. All right, now, my sister, brother, let me say a couple things on a few matters. Number one, we are now in the beginning of another conference year. Let me say to every pastor, you should be having a church conference. The last annual conference, the Atlanta, North Georgia conference, was over at the end of May. And so we are now in the middle of July. Between now and the end of August, every church should have a church conference. Every church should have a church conference. At the church conference, the pastor should lay out his or her plans for every local church for this conference year. You should list out and present to the congregation the goals that you have for the church for this year. If you don't have any goals, that means you don't expect church to do anything. Every church ought to have some goals. I'm hoping that each church would have a goal to grow by at least 10%. Grow by at least 10%. I like the goal of asking everybody in the church to try to bring at least one person to Christ or to the church. Challenge the congregation to do. You know, one of the reasons why a lot of our folk don't do anything is because we don't expect or require anything of them. So invite and challenge everybody to win or bring at least one person. All right? On the issue of stewardship, preach and teach about stewardship. Try to increase and get our folk to be tithers, to be good stewards of that which God has entrusted to us. Every church ought to have some goals. And lay people, when you have the church, first of all, if a church conference is not scheduled, you need to ask the pastor, when is our church conference? Number two, you ought to ask the pastor, what's our goals for this year? What's your vision for the church for this year? Nothing wrong with a lay person asking the pastor those questions. Everything rises or falls on leadership. The church the pastor and the finance commission ought to present to the church the budget for that local church for this year. The budget is supposed to be approved by the official board. Now, when I pastor St. Matthew, the discipline says it should be approved by the official board. What I did, I had the official board approve it, but I also presented it to the church conference. The church conference are all of the congregants in that church. And the reason I had the church conference deal with it is because you're depending upon everybody in that church to contribute to support the church budget. And again, every church ought to have a budget. Every church ought to have a budget. Presiding elders, when you go to the quarterly conference, you ought to ask them to give you a copy of that church's budget for this year. Every church ought to have but there is no excuse for any church not to have a budget. All right, any question on that? All right. Second, between the time the annual conference ended and at least by, if you're in Macon or Atlanta North, it would be a little later, but you ought to have had at least one, the South, the Southwest, the Georgia, and Augusta, you should have had at least one quarterly conference by now. One quarterly conference by now. Now, let me say this about quarterly conferences. The presiding elder ought to get with the pastor to set a date for the quarterly conference. Now, understand there's some pastors who make it hard to schedule a quarterly conference. Whatever date you give is not good for them. Well, if you're in that situation, you set a date, tell the pastor, this is when I'm coming. I'm coming to hold a quarterly conference. If the pastor doesn't come or doesn't announce it or doesn't arrange for it, then the elder needs to let the office know. You got to have quarterly conference, particularly the first quarterly conference. The first quarterly conference is when you confirm the stewards of the church. The first quarterly conference is when you confirm the stewards of the church for this conference year. The stewards have to be confirmed annually. In fact, let me go back and say a word about the church conference. The reason the church conference is important, the church conference is when you elect the trustees for the local church. Church conference has to be announced for 2 consecutive weeks. Church conference is when the trustees in a local church are elected. Trustees are elected by the church conference. There is a process for the election of trustees. If the church has 7 trustees, the pastor nominates 14 people. The pastor nominates twice as many trustees as the church is going to have. If you have 7 trustees, the pastor nominates 14 people. If the church has 10 trustees, take it back, if the church has 5 trustees, the pastor nominates 10 people. Then the church conference votes on who will be elected trustees. You must be elected by a majority of the votes cast. That's the law. Yes, sir, Elder Williamson? Elder, stand up so they can hear you. Use your whooping voice. That is correct. Yeah, the reason I said, for example, 5 and 7, it should be an odd number. An odd number. All right? Any questions on the election of trustees? All right. Yes, sir. Where's Dr. Rome? Oh, I'm sorry, you behind. I'm sorry, Elder. Oh, I'm going to come to that. That is correct. I'm going to come to that next. All right. Also at the quarterly conference, you elect, take it back, at the church conference, you elect your delegate to the annual conference. That should be done at the first quarterly conference of the year. Any question on that? All right. Now, elders, make sure that we have the quarterly conferences. No church is too big and no church is too small not to have a quarterly conference. Now, sometimes I am amazed. I'm amazed sometimes when the annual conference is held, say, in March. And then a pastor says that they confirm their stewards in November. Well, if your annual conference was in March, why are you confirming your stewards and electing your trustees in November? So again, elders, when you come to that first quarterly conference, there's some things that ought to be taken care of in the first quarterly conference. There's some things that ought to be taken care of in that church conference. That church conference after the annual conference in a local church ought to be your planning meeting. Any question on that? Reverend Hart? No, I don't have a problem if the meeting is Zoom. Let me say this though. As it relates to our churches and the Zoom meetings, I understand some of our churches are still having Zoom services and the churches are not open. Now, my brothers and my sisters, today people going where they want to go. They go to work, they go out to eat, they go out to sporting events, they go shopping. People go where they want to go. And now I think all of our churches ought to be open. Now that does not mean you do not take the proper precaution. You still ought to check the temperature of people when they enter. I don't have any problem and encourage you to wear a mask. Don't have any problem with that at all. But, you know, don't use the pandemic as an excuse not to have church.